The galaxy far, far away has always had a clear line between good and evil, or so we were told. We grew up believing the Jedi were the ultimate guardians of peace, and the Sith were monsters who needed to be destroyed. But if you strip away the lightsabers and the heroic music, the reality is much darker. The Jedi Order didn't just fail, they became the very villains they swore to fight. By the time Order 66 arrived, it wasn't a tragedy, it was a reckoning. For 1,000 generations, the Jedi were the guardians of peace and justice, but by the time of the prequels, they were soldiers serving a corrupt government. They traded their robes for armor and their morals for military rank. The moment they agreed to lead the Grand Army of the Republic, they lost their way. They stopped listening to the Force and started taking orders from politicians. A peacekeeper does not lead a galactic assault, nor does a peacekeeper invade planets. The Jedi forgot that their loyalty belonged to the Force rather than the Senate. Before we expose their darkest secrets, I want to say a massive thank you to everyone who commented on our last video, as this topic came directly from your discussions. We read every single one. If you have a wild what-if scenario or a theory you want us to cover next, drop it in the comments below. The most liked ideas will get made into future videos. And of course, if you're enjoying this deep exploration, hit that subscribe button to join us for more. Let's talk about the Clone Army. The Jedi, who supposedly valued all life, accepted an army of genetically modified human beings, bred for the sole purpose of dying in war. They didn't ask if the clones wanted to fight, and they didn't give them a choice. They took millions of living, thinking men and treated them like organic battle droids. You cannot claim to be the guardian of freedom while leading a slave army. The Jedi didn't liberate the clones, they weaponized them. Every time a Jedi ignited a lightsaber on the battlefield, they were standing on the backs of enslaved men. Using a slave army was bad enough, but the Jedi also normalized the use of child soldiers. Ahsoka Tano was 14 years old when she was sent to the front lines of a galactic war. In any other context, sending a teenager to command troops in a war zone would be a war crime. The Jedi took children from their families, indoctrinated them into a cult that forbade emotional connection, and then handed them laser swords to kill enemies of the state. They called them commanders, but they were children, forced to grow up surrounded by death. The Jedi Council knew something was wrong with the clone army's origin, and they chose to ignore it. When Obi-Wan discovered the army on Kamino, he learned it was ordered by Sifo Dyas, a Jedi master who had been dead for years. The Council later learned that the genetic template was Jango Fett, an associate of Count Dooku. Yet, they didn't stop the war or investigate. The war was convenient. They needed the troops. They were so desperate to maintain their power that they accepted a mysterious army gifted to them by their enemies, sealing their own fate. History remembers Count Dooku as a Sith Lord, but he started as a political idealist who saw the rot in the Republic long before anyone else. He left the Order because he saw the Jedi becoming dogs of the Senate, ignoring the suffering of the Outer Rim to protect the core world's wealth. Dooku warned them about the corruption and the Sith. The tragedy of Dooku isn't that he fell to the dark side, it's that he had to become a monster to fight a system that was already broken. His critiques of the Jedi were entirely accurate. While the Jedi sat in their ivory tower on Coruscant, places like Tatooine were ruled by gangsters and slavers. Shmi Skywalker lived and died a slave, and the Jedi did nothing. They had the power to free slaves, but they didn't because it wasn't politically expedient for the Republic. They allowed injustice to thrive right under their noses, as long as it didn't threaten the Senate's stability. Anakin's fall didn't start with Palpatine. It started when the Jedi left his mother to rot in slavery because she wasn't part of the mission. The trial of Ahsoka Tano is the definitive proof that the Jedi Order deserved to fall. When Ahsoka was framed for the temple bombing, the Council didn't stand by her or investigate. They expelled her and handed her over to a military tribunal to be executed, all to appease the Senate. They threw a child, one of their own, to the wolves to save their political skin. Even when her innocence was proven, they offered a half-hearted non-apology and called it her great trial. That was the moment Anakin Skywalker truly lost faith in the Order. Barriss Offee was the bomber, but her confession remains one of the most chilling moments in Star Wars history because she was right. She told the court that the Jedi were responsible for the war and had become villains in the conflict. She saw the hypocrisy that the Masters were blind to. The Jedi had become so consumed by war that they lost the light they claimed to serve. Barriss was a villain, yes, but her words were the diagnosis of a terminal illness that the Council refused to treat. General Pong Krell wasn't just an anomaly. He was a symptom of the Jedi's detachment. He treated clones like disposable equipment, sending them to their deaths by the hundreds because he viewed them as less than human. While Krell fell to the dark side, his attitude was just an extreme version of the Council's own policy. The Jedi viewed the clones as tools to win a war, not as living beings. Krell was the monster in the dark, but the Council was the monster in the light, signing the orders that sent millions to their graves. The Jedi Code forbade attachment, forcing knights to suppress their natural emotions rather than learning to manage them. This dogma is exactly what created Darth Vader. When Anakin came to Yoda with fears about losing his wife, Yoda's advice was effectively to get over it and rejoice that she would die. It was cold, unfeeling, and useless. By demonizing love and attachment, the Jedi left Anakin with nowhere to turn but Palpatine. If the Jedi had allowed Anakin to love openly, Palpatine would never have been able to manipulate him. Their fear of emotion created the monster that destroyed them. Mace Windu didn't just kill Jango Fett, he decapitated him in front of his young son. In that moment, Windu created Boba Fett, a bounty hunter who would plague the galaxy for decades. This was the Jedi way during the war, solving problems with violence and ignoring the fallout. They left a traumatized child on a battlefield, holding his father's helmet. That lack of compassion and failure to consider the consequences of their violence is exactly why the galaxy turned against them. They created their own demons and then acted surprised when those demons came back to haunt them. The moment the Jedi Order truly died wasn't Order 66, but rather inside the Chancellor's office. When Mace Windu had Palpatine defeated, he said that he was too dangerous to be left alive. Those are the exact same words Palpatine used to justify killing Count Dooku. Windu decided to execute a prisoner without trial, bypassing the very democracy he claimed to serve. At that moment, there was no difference between the Jedi and the Sith. Anakin saw this hypocrisy clearly as Windu proved that the Jedi were willing to break their own code whenever it suited them. Yoda was the Grand Master for centuries, which means the rot of the Order happened on his watch. He admitted in Revenge of the Sith that he had failed. His stagnation allowed the Sith to rise right under his nose. He was too set in his ways, too arrogant to believe the Sith could return, and too blinded by the dark side to see the clone army trap. Yoda's refusal to adapt or change the Order's dogmatic views doomed every single Jedi. Wisdom isn't just about knowing the rules, it's about knowing when they are wrong. To understand why the Order failed, look at the one man who got it right, Qui-Gon Jinn. The Council called him a maverick because he followed the will of the Force rather than the will of the Senate. He was the only one who understood that the symbiotic relationship with living beings was more important than political dogmas. If the Council had listened to Qui-Gon, or if he had trained Anakin, the Emperor would never have won. Qui-Gon represented what the Jedi were supposed to be, and the fact that he was an outcast proves how far the Order had fallen. It sounds harsh, but Order 66 was necessary. The Jedi Order had become a diseased limb that needed to be cut off for the galaxy to heal. They were stagnant, corrupt, and arrogant. By wiping them out, the Force hit the reset button. It cleared the way for Luke Skywalker to build something new, a Jedi path that understood love, attachment, and redemption. Anakin Skywalker did bring balance to the Force by destroying a corrupt institution that had lost its right to exist. The Jedi didn't deserve to die, but the Order deserved to end. The tragedy of the Jedi isn't that they were evil, but that they were so convinced of their own righteousness that they couldn't see the darkness growing within them. They built their own trap and walked right into it. Star Wars teaches us that even the heroes can fall when they stop questioning themselves. If this new perspective on the galaxy changed how you see the movies, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss our next deep look into the lore. The Force will be with you, always.